Rick was a family man. He loved his boys, and he loved his Laurel.
Yeah.
I know every time I talked to him and met with him, he was very proud of his boys. David, Daniel, Devin, you were very special to him.
When we were kids, we were good friends, very good friends, and little kids, and about 11, 12 years old, and he was very ordinary, I tell you that much. He liked pranking, he was a jokester. It's like his eyes, I got to know him enough to know when there is a little like a sparkling on his eyes, he is looking, he saw something where he can either scare somebody or surprise somebody or even shock somebody.
I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I'm the one who actually introduced Rick and Laurel to each other. And I went and picked up Rick. We were getting ready to go to a missionary kids retreat. Laurel was there, so I told Rick about her, and I knew that they were going to hit it off really, really well. The key sign for that was the very first day they met, they dared each other to eat cat food from a can at Cedar Springs Camp, and that was the launch of their relationship. So a relationship that was based on cat food.
I had just returned from a fishing trip, and Laurel, at that time, Laurel had Devin, their son, whom I had not met yet. So we decided to meet up at a restaurant. And I was standing outside the restaurant on the sidewalk, and Rick was carrying Devin, and he saw me and he took Devin and held him by his ankles upside down, carrying him down the sidewalk. And as he approached me, he said, "Look what I caught," as if to top any fish story that I had.
Well, I actually met Rick for the first time. I knew who he was, but I met him for the first time when I was at Northwest. It was a pretty interesting meeting. I got home late one evening and I saw the campus security vehicle parked out front of the dorm. And I decided to just pull a small prank, and I went over to try and let all the air out of the tires on the vehicles. It was quite late. It was in the middle of winter. Here came this guy dressed in cut-off jeans and a vest, and that's all he had on. And he was yelling, "Here, let me help." And he had this device that you would use to take the little air things out so we could make the tires flat. And in just a few seconds, we made the tires completely flat. And he said, "I'm Rick Ellis." "Oh, I'm Dave Kinney." And that's how we started our unusual friendship.
I think I would say that one thing that I learned was that God can use these childlike, adventurous kind of servant guy in mighty ways to further his kingdom, and that's pretty neat.
And I tell you, I was a little surprised because I'm going like, this was the ordinary boy, and now he serves the Lord. And I never dared to ask him what he thought of me when he saw me preaching holiness. Probably he was just happy that I was saved, still saved.
I think very few people that knew us in Northwest would have really taken us that seriously, that we had a real sense of calling. But from the time I knew him, he always knew that he was going to go back down to Latin America and share the gospel with people, plant churches, and train up church leaders.
He was a man that was totally dedicated to God and the plan that God had for his life. I call it being all in. And he was a man that was all in for God's people. The big congregations and those simple people along the way.
So I think something Ricky was a little crazy, but he did impact a lot of people in South America. And that's the way that God used his servants, impacting them through the word and through love, through caring, and committing our whole life like Rick did.
In a small town, Arauco, in Chile, there was a congregation of about 15 people that met in a very, very tiny little house. Do you know that about 3 years later, those 15 people turned into a congregation of over 250? The whole town was stimulated and encouraged by what Rick did in that church.
He had this adventurous, energetic zeal about doing things. And when I saw him like in Santiago in the campaigns and just how committed he was, that really influenced me because it showed me that God can use this energy.
I used to play piano for them in Concepcion and Arauco, but there's something that I recall from Rick all the time, and it was this thing. Every time when we went to the service in the morning, he gave me a ride to that place, and he used to go like this, rubbing hand, and you said, what are you doing? It's kind of hard to imagine a person every day doing the rubbing thing because he's happy to go to work. Well, actually, Rick, he did enjoy what he was doing. I think he loved being a minister of the gospel in a different country. I think he loved the Hispanic culture. I give thanks to the Lord for remembering that rubbing hand because it was an example for me about how you should love the work that God is doing through you.
I remember Rick and Laurel's devotion to their work as church planners and mentors to a lot of young pastors and leaders in the church.
Through him, I think I was able to understand that I do have a call and I have to do it the best way that I can and always give the best for the people.
Rick was really good at seeing God's giftings and treasures in other people. I learned a lot from Rick about this.
The best leaders replicate themselves. Rick and Laurel did a wonderful job of that. They mentored, they discipled leaders, and what a testimony that they have to show that they can actually hand off the torch to someone else.
He helped them build the church, and people did it sacrificially. And the Lord was able to bless the people because of Rick's leadership and encouragement.
As we were traveling from one church to the other, they'd say, Trudy, Ron, would you mind stopping at this person's house or that couple's house? I think that they need a touch of the Lord. It was those single people that he knew and heard about that he was just as concerned about, that he loved just as deeply as the large congregations that we met with.
Rick had a heart for the people.
Rick loved motorcycles, and he introduced that same love to his boys. I remember they went on motorcycle trips a lot, whether it was here in the United States at different times or a lot when they were down in Chile. This last year, Rick fulfilled one of his biggest dreams, and that was to ride his motorcycle from the United States down to Chile. Went through Central America and South America.
And Rick just lived it right to the end. I mean, his trip, I had to show one of my coworkers that, and who's about the same age as Rick, and he saw that, and he was just amazed. And not only that, I just said, this guy is a missionary down there, and he didn't even know that. And the adventure doesn't need to stop. The adventure of living on earth, the adventure of being with Christ.
Now, knowing what we know, I see that and I view that as Rick riding triumphantly through a land that he loved, the people that he loved, on a mode of transportation that he loved, and all along the way, he stopped and talked to the local leaders, pastors, and encouraged them. All I can say is, well done, Rick. Well done.